Grandson kicks his grandmother out of the house, but had no idea what she would do to him. Elizabeth Hamilton, at 70 years old, carefully set the breakfast table. Her wrinkled but still nimble fingers positioned each piece of English porcelain with millimetric precision. Today was her birthday, but she knew it would be just another ordinary day in that routine of silence and indifference. "Good morning, Mrs. Hamilton," greeted the housekeeper who had been with her for 30 years, the only person who really cared about that date. "The coffee is delicious as always." "Happy birthday, Mrs. Elizabeth. 70 years well lived." "Thank God," Elizabeth smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her thoughts wandered through the two-story mansion with antique furniture inherited from various generations. Every corner of that house held memories, some sweet, others not so much, especially those involving her grandson, Tyler. Upstairs, the sound of hurried footsteps broke the silence. Tyler, 25 years old, came running down the stairs, adjusting his tie and checking his phone at the same time. He walked right past his grandmother, grabbed a piece of toast and headed toward the door. "Good morning, Tyler." Elizabeth's voice was soft, almost asking permission to exist. He paused for a moment, looking at his grandmother with that gaze that mixed boredom and irritation. "I'm late, Grandma. I have an important meeting at the office. Today is a special day, do you remember?" Tyler rolled his eyes, quickly consulting the calendar on his phone. "I don't have anything scheduled today besides the meeting. If it's one of your doctor's appointments, reschedule it. I can't take you." The door slammed before Elizabeth could say anything. She took a deep breath, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. The mansion, once full of life when her husband William was still alive, now seemed increasingly cold and empty, despite Tyler's presence. Throughout the day, the phone remained silent. Not a message, not a call. Elizabeth kept herself busy with small tasks to distract her mind. She organized old photo albums, watered the orchids in the winter garden, and baked a cake for herself, a tradition she had maintained since learning it from her grandmother. At least she would have that to celebrate. "Aren't you going out for dinner, Mrs. Elizabeth?" asked Martha, concerned. "No, Martha, I'll just stay here. You can go home early today." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Around 8 in the evening, Elizabeth heard the sound of the electric gate. Her heart raced for a moment. Could Tyler have remembered after all? She quickly fixed her gray hair and adjusted her dress. Maybe he had prepared a surprise. The sound of loud laughter invaded the living room. Tyler wasn't alone. By his side was a young woman with blonde hair and a short dress, whom Elizabeth recognized as Megan, her grandson's most recent girlfriend. "Grandma, this is Megan. I think you met at the New Year's Eve party." Megan waved with disinterest while continuing to examine every detail of the Hamilton mansion. "Of course, Megan. How are you, dear?" Elizabeth extended her hand, which the young woman quickly shook. "Your grandson has told me so much about this house. It's really impressive, but it desperately needs a renovation. This outdated style is so over, don't you think?" Tyler laughed, embracing his girlfriend by the waist. "Grandma is kind of attached to these old things, family heritage and all that." "Well," Elizabeth began, but was interrupted. "Let's go. Upstairs, Meg. I want to show you my room." Before they went up, Elizabeth tried once more. "Tyler, today is a special day. You really don't remember?" The young man stopped halfway up the stairs, irritated. "I already told you I don't know what you're talking about. If it's important, put it in my Google Calendar." Megan's mocking laughter echoed through the marble staircase as they went up, leaving Elizabeth alone in the living room, with the untouched birthday cake on the coffee table. Hours later, when Elizabeth was already in her room, preparing for bed, she heard voices coming from the hallway. It wasn't her habit to listen to other people's conversations, but something in the tone caught her attention. She approached the partially open door. "This house is amazing, Tyler. Imagine when it's all ours," Megan was saying. "We could modernize everything, tear down some walls, make a huge closet where your grandmother's room is. One day it will be, don't worry." Tyler's voice sounded confident. "We just need to wait a little longer." "How long?" "The old lady still seems pretty healthy." Elizabeth's heart skipped a beat. She knew that her relationship with her grandson wasn't the best, but she never imagined hearing such cruel words. "Not long," Tyler replied. "I've already convinced her to put everything in my name. The house, the company, the offshore accounts. It was the least she could do after I had to put up with her lectures all these years. And there's no risk of her changing her mind." "Not at all. Grandma is too easy to manipulate. I just need to pretend to care occasionally, and she'll do whatever I want. It's always been that way." Elizabeth backed away, silently closing the door. A solitary tear ran down her wrinkled face, but something inside her changed at that moment. It was no longer pain she felt, it was determination. The next morning, while having her coffee, Elizabeth was surprised by Tyler, who came down the stairs much later than usual. He seemed unconcerned, as if he had no commitments. "Good morning, Grandma," he said, taking a cup and sitting at the table. It was rare for him to have coffee with her. "Good morning, Tyler," Elizabeth replied, carefully observing her grandson. He seemed strangely cordial. "You know, I've been thinking," he began, stirring his coffee with studied nonchalance. "This house is really big for just the two of us. Megan mentioned yesterday that you might feel more comfortable in a smaller apartment, easier to manage." Elizabeth maintained a serene expression, although she felt a pang in her heart. "I see. And what do you suggest, Tyler?" "Maybe one of those senior living communities, you know? Luxurious, of course. With people your age, activities, you wouldn't feel so lonely." "How thoughtful of you thinking about my well-being," Elizabeth commented, with a calmness that surprised even herself. "And you would stay here, taking care of the Hamilton house?" "Exactly." Tyler smiled, relieved that his grandmother had understood so easily. "I would keep everything in order. Well, with some necessary modernizations, of course." "Of course," Elizabeth agreed. "And when would you like me to leave?" Tyler almost choked on his coffee. "It's not really in leaving. It's more like moving to a better place for you." He tried to fix it. "There's no rush." "I understand. Well, I'll think about it." During the following days, Tyler showed unusual attention to his grandmother. He called during the day to check on her, brought small gifts, asked about her health. Elizabeth received everything with an enigmatic smile, while putting into practice a plan she had been developing for months. On a Thursday afternoon, when she knew Tyler would be at work, Elizabeth received her longtime friend and lawyer, Dr. Richard, at home. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Elizabeth? It's quite a drastic decision," the lawyer warned, adjusting his eyes glasses while reading the documents. "More than sure, Richard. In fact, I should have done this a long time ago." "And what about Tyler? Does he know?" "He will know at the right time." That night, during dinner, Tyler seemed particularly anxious. He fidgeted with his food without really eating, looked at the clock frequently. "Is something wrong, Tyler?" asked Elizabeth. "Actually, Grandma, I need to tell you something." He put his fork next to his plate, rehearsing a serious expression. "Megan is pregnant." Elizabeth widened her eyes. "Pregnant? But you've been together for such a short time." "Yeah, it was unexpected." He sighed, playing the role of a man concerned with responsibilities. "We'll need to get married soon, and I thought that, well, that the house would be perfect for us to start our family." "I see." Elizabeth kept her voice neutral. "And how are the wedding plans coming along?" "We're still organizing the details, but we need to decide soon where we're going to live." "Are you asking me to leave the house, Tyler?" Elizabeth asked directly, looking her grandson in the eyes. Tyler hesitated for a moment, but soon regained his usual confidence. "It's not really a request, Grandma. It's more of a statement. This house is rightfully mine. Grandpa always said that one day everything would be mine, and now I need it for my family." "Your family," Elizabeth repeated slowly. "It's interesting how you never considered me part of your family, Tyler." "Of course I do," he protested, pretending to be offended. "But you've lived here long enough, now I need my space." Elizabeth took a deep breath. "How much time do you think I have to pack my things?" Tyler's face lit up. "So you agree? We can help with the move, find a nice place for you." "Don't worry about that, Tyler. I already have something in mind." Elizabeth rose from the table with a dignity that surprised her grandson. "I'll be gone in a week." "A week is perfect," Tyler could barely hide his joy. Megan will love the news. I imagine she will. Elizabeth headed to her room, leaving her grandson alone with his apparent victory. In the days that followed, Tyler and Megan began openly planning the changes they would make to the house. They measured spaces, discussed colors, called decorators for estimates, all in front of Elizabeth, as if she were no longer there. At no point did they ask if she needed help with the move or where she would be living. Megan had temporarily moved into the mansion, occupying the guest room. Her clothes were already invading the main closet, which belonged to Elizabeth. "This closet is tiny for all my things," she complained as Elizabeth passed through the hallway. "We'll have to tear down the wall of the room next door." "Do as you think best, dear," replied Elizabeth with an enigmatic smile. On Sunday, the 6th day since the dinner conversation, Tyler noticed that some paintings had disappeared from the walls. "Grandma, did you take those paintings by Grandpa?" "Yes, Tyler. I'm organizing what I'll take with me." "Oh, okay then," he shrugged, not really caring. "As long as you leave the main furniture." Elizabeth didn't respond, just continued on her way to the garden, where she spent hours contemplating the plants she had cultivated for decades. The next morning, a sunny Monday, Tyler woke up earlier than usual. He had an important meeting at the company and wanted to impress the directors. He put on his best Italian suit, adjusted his silk tie, and went down for breakfast. To his surprise, Elizabeth wasn't in the dining room as usual. Instead of the elaborate breakfast that always awaited him, there was only an envelope on the table. "For Tyler," it said in elegant handwriting. Intrigued, he opened the envelope and found a short note. "Dear Tyler, as agreed, I have left the house. I hope you and Megan will be very happy in the place you choose to live. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. Elizabeth?" Tyler reread the note, confused. In the place you choose to live? What did she mean by that? They had already chosen, right here in the Hamilton mansion. He ran upstairs to his grandmother's room. The door was open, and the room completely empty. There were no more clothes. In the closet, no personal items on the vanity. The curtains had been removed, allowing the morning sun to enter unfiltered. "Megan!" he shouted, running to the guest room. His girlfriend was still sound asleep. "Wake up! Grandma's gone!" Megan opened her eyes slowly. "So what? Isn't that what we wanted?" "Yes, but..." Tyler seemed strangely restless. "There's something weird. Her note, the way she phrased it." "Stop being paranoid." Megan stretched languidly. "The old lady finally understood her place and left us in peace. Let's celebrate." Calmed by his girlfriend's words, Tyler decided to set aside his concerns. After all, the plan had worked. The house was theirs now. He finished getting ready and left for work, promising Megan they would buy champagne to celebrate that night. Upon returning from the office in the late afternoon, Tyler was surprised to see an unfamiliar car parked in front of the mansion's gate. Two men were talking on the sidewalk, looking at the property. "Can I help you?" he asked, approaching them. "Ah, you must be..." One of the men consulted a clipboard. "Tyler Hamilton?" "Yes, that's me." "Great. I'm Paul Miller from New Home. Real estate? This is my colleague, Robert. We came to check if the property is already vacant for the new tenant." Tyler felt his blood freeze in his veins. "What do you mean, new tenant? This house is mine." The two men looked at each other, confused. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but according to our records, this property has belonged to Horizon Investments. Since..." Paul consulted his papers again. "Since 3 months ago. The rental contract in your name and Mrs. Elizabeth Hamilton's ends today." "This is absurd." Tyler was furious. "This house has belonged to my family for generations. It couldn't have been sold without my knowledge." "Well, the documents say otherwise. Mrs. Elizabeth Hamilton sold the property legally, with all necessary signatures." Paul took a folder from his briefcase. "Here's a copy of the sales contract if you'd like to verify." With trembling hands, Tyler took the documents. There was his grandmother's signature, notarized, transferring the property to a company he had never heard of. "This is impossible. There must be some mistake," he muttered, more to himself than to the realtors. "There is no mistake, Mr. Hamilton, and the new tenant will arrive tomorrow. We need the house to be completely vacated by 10 a.m. Tyler ran into the mansion, almost knocking over Megan, who was coming to greet him at the door. "What happened?" she asked, frightened by his expression. "Grandma sold the house," he shouted, throwing the documents on the sofa. "Sold it 3 months ago and didn't tell us anything." "What do you mean, sold it?" Megan picked up the papers, trying to understand. "She can't do that. You're the heir." "Apparently she can. The house was in her name, not mine." Tyler paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in desperation. "We have to leave by tomorrow morning." "Leave? Where will we go?" Megan collapsed on the sofa, pale. "I don't know. I need to talk to her." Tyler grabbed his phone and dialed his grandmother's number. After several rings, she finally answered. "Hello, Tyler." Elizabeth's voice sounded serene on the other end of the line. "Grandma, what's this about selling the house? This can't be true." "But it is true, Tyler. I sold the property to Horizon Investments 3 months ago. I thought you'd be happy to know I'm following your advice to look for a smaller place, more suitable for a lady my age. But why didn't you tell me? This house was supposed to be mine." "Was it?" Elizabeth's voice was gentle but firm. "I don't remember promising the house to you, Tyler. In fact, your grandfather left everything to me, so that I could decide what to do when I thought best." "And you decided to leave me homeless?" His voice oscillated between anger and despair. "I didn't do anything, Tyler. You asked me to leave, remember? Now you're the one who's homeless." A heavy silence settled between them. "Grandma," Tyler changed to a pleading tone, "you can't do this to me. Where will Megan and I live? I'm sure intelligent people like you will find a solution. After all, isn't Megan expecting a baby? Doesn't her father have that penthouse in Brookside?" Tyler swallowed hard. How did she know the pregnancy was a lie? "Grandma, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you to leave. Let's talk. We can work this out." "It's already resolved, Tyler. The house was sold legally. The new tenants arrive. Tomorrow, I suggest you start packing." Before he could say anything else, Elizabeth hung up the phone. Megan was panicking. "Now what? What are we going to do?" "I don't know," Tyler shouted, throwing his phone against the wall. "This is a nightmare." They spent the night awake, packing what they could. Most of the furniture would have to stay, as it belonged to the house. Tyler tried to contact some friends to find a temporary place to stay, but strangely, no one answered his calls. The next morning, at 9 a.m., the realtors were back, this time accompanied by a moving crew. "Good morning, Mr. Hamilton," greeted Paul. "I hope you're ready to leave." "We need more time," pleaded Tyler, deep circles under his eyes. "We haven't managed to pack everything yet." "I'm sorry, but the contract is clear. The handover must be done by 10 a.m. Paul checked his watch. "You have exactly 1 hour." Desperate, Tyler and Megan threw what they could into suitcases and boxes. Clothes, electronics, personal items, all mixed together without any organization. At 10 a.m. sharp, the movers began to remove the boxes, taking them to the sidewalk. "This is outrageous," protested Megan, watching her belongings being piled on the street. "We're the Hamiltons. You can't treat us like this." "Actually, miss, only Mr. Tyler is a Hamilton, and from what I understand, the previous owner, Mrs. Elizabeth Hamilton, authorized this procedure." Paul showed another document signed by Elizabeth, detailing how the eviction should proceed. By 11 a.m., Tyler and Megan were on the sidewalk, surrounded by suitcases and boxes with nowhere to go. The mansion's gate was locked, and a property rented sign was placed on the wall. "I'm going to my parents' house," Megan finally said, taking out her phone. "You figure it out." "What do you mean? I thought we would stay together." Tyler couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Together where? On the street?" Megan laughed bitterly. "You said you were rich, that we would have the mansion to ourselves. Now you have nothing. Why would I stay with you?" "But what about the baby?" Megan rolled her eyes. "Don't be stupid, Tyler. There was never any baby. It was just a plan to speed up your grandmother's departure." She typed quickly on her phone. "My dad is coming to pick me up. Don't contact me again." Abandoned by his girlfriend and with nowhere to go, Tyler finally called his cousin, Jason, who agreed to shelter him temporarily in his small apartment in Eastwood on the east side of the city. "Just for a few weeks until you get organized," warned Jason, helping to carry the suitcases into the guest room, which barely fit a twin bed. That same day, trying to better understand what had happened, Tyler went to the family business office, Hamilton Investments. His grandfather had founded the company decades ago, and he had always assumed that one day he would take control. At the reception, he was greeted with strange looks. "I'd like to speak with Charles Murphy," he said to the receptionist, referring to the financial director and his grandmother's right-hand man. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, not recognizing him. "I don't need an appointment. I'm Tyler Hamilton, the owner's grandson." The receptionist made a quick call and, after a few minutes, indicated that he could go up. Charles received him formally in his office. "Tyler, what a surprise. What brings you here?" "I need to understand what's happening, Charles. Grandma sold the house without telling me. I need to know if the company was sold too." The director adjusted himself in his chair, visibly uncomfortable. "Tyler, I think you should talk directly with your grandmother about this." "She's not answering my calls." Tyler hit the desk, frustrated. "I need to know what my position is here. It was always agreed that I would take over the company one day." Charles sighed deeply before responding. "There is no position for you here, Tyler. The company was restructured 2 months ago. Mrs. Elizabeth transferred 70% of the shares to a charitable foundation she created. 20% were divided among long-time employees, including myself, and 10% went to your cousin Nathan, who has been working at the Houston branch for 5 years. "Nathan?" Tyler couldn't believe it. "That nerd who can barely tie his own shoes." "That nerd graduated with honors in business administration, got an MBA from Harvard, and made the Houston branch triple its profits in the last 3 years. Charles seemed irritated by the comment. "While you barely showed up for meetings when your grandmother begged for your presence. This is outrageous. I'll contest it legally. This company is my legacy." "You can try, but the documents are impeccable. Dr. Richard personally handled all the legal aspects." Charles stood up, indicating that the conversation was over. "I suggest you find a lawyer if you want, but I warn you it will be a waste of time and money." Humiliated and furious, Tyler left the office. In the elevator, he crossed paths with long-time employees who pretended not to recognize him. The doorman, who had always treated him with deference, merely nodded briefly. In the days that followed, Tyler desperately tried to contact Elizabeth. He called several times a day, sent messages, emails, but got no response. He sought out mutual friends, relatives, acquaintances. No one knew, or no one wanted to say, where she was. The news of the fall of the Hamilton heir apparent spread quickly among the city's elite. Friends who once competed for his company at parties and events now didn't return his calls. Invitations to dinners and parties stopped coming. The corporate credit card he had always used was blocked, and his personal account, which had never been very robust due to excessive spending, soon went into the red. After 3 weeks in Jason's apartment, the situation became unsustainable. "Tyler, you need to get a job," his cousin said during dinner. "I can't keep supporting you." "A job?" Tyler almost choked on his food. "I've never had to work for real. I always had the family business." "Well, now you don't anymore," Jason was direct. "I have a friend who needs someone in the administrative department of his car dealership. The salary isn't much, but it's enough for you to rent a studio apartment and start over." The idea of working at a used car dealership was humiliating for Tyler, but he had no alternatives. The next day, wearing one of his expensive Italian suits, he presented himself for the interview. The owner of the dealership, Steve Thompson, was a man in his 50s with a simple appearance. He looked at Tyler with curiosity. "So you're the famous grandson of Mrs. Elizabeth." "You know my grandmother?" asked Tyler, surprised. "Everyone in this town knows Elizabeth Hamilton." Steve checked the improvised resume that Tyler had prepared. "I see you have no real work experience." "I supervised operations at my family's company," lied Tyler. Right. Steve smiled, not believing for a second. "Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm only giving you this chance because Jason is a good friend, and because, despite everything I've heard about you, I believe everyone deserves a second chance." "What have you heard about me?" Tyler asked, suspicious. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is, do you want the job or not?" Swallowing his pride, Tyler accepted the job. The salary was less than 1/10 of what he used to spend monthly when living with his grandmother. The work was monotonous and repetitive, filing contracts, answering phones, organizing the dealership's visit schedule. For the first time in his life, Tyler faced the reality of common work, public transportation, bills to pay. The small studio apartment he managed to rent in the East End district was a cubicle compared to his old room in the mansion. There were no employees to cook, clean, or wash his clothes. Meanwhile, through social media, he could glimpse Elizabeth's new life. Photos of her in Paris, visiting the Louvre. Next, on the Amalfi Coast, sunbathing on a yacht. Then, in New York, watching a Broadway musical. She looked rejuvenated, happy, free. 3 months passed. Tyler was slowly adapting to his new reality. Work continued to be a burden, but at least he wasn't on the street anymore. Steve, surprisingly, proved to be a patient boss, teaching him the basics about responsibility and commitment. One Friday afternoon, while organizing the dealership's files, Tyler received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Richard, his grandmother's lawyer. "Tyler, your grandmother would like to meet with you tomorrow if you're available." Tyler's heart raced. Finally, this was his chance to regain his grandmother's trust, to return to the life of comfort he had always known. "Of course. Where and what time?" "At the cafe in the Museum of Modern Art at 10 a.m. "I'll be there." The next day, Tyler woke up early, put on his best clothes, which were already showing signs of wear, and headed to the museum. He arrived half an hour early, anxious, mentally rehearsing what he would say. He would apologize, promise to be a better grandson, beg for another chance. At 10 a.m. sharp, he saw his grandmother enter the cafe. Elizabeth was stunning, wearing an elegant ensemble, discreet but visibly expensive jewelry, and her grey hair perfectly arranged in a sophisticated bun. She looked 10 years younger than the last time he had seen her. "Grandma!" he exclaimed, standing up to hug her. Elizabeth received the hug with politeness, but without matching his enthusiasm. "Tyler!" She sat at the table. "You look healthy." "I've been working hard," he said, trying to appear responsible. "At a car dealership." "That's good. Work dignifies a man, as your grandfather always said." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Tyler finally took courage. "Grandma, I'm sorry for everything. I was an idiot, ungrateful, arrogant." "Yes, you were," confirmed Elizabeth calmly, "but I didn't call you here to hear apologies." "No?" Tyler felt a chill down his spine. "No. I called you to tell you that I'm moving permanently to Italy. I bought a villa in Tuscany and I'm going to live there with my sister Jane." "Aunt Jane? But you barely spoke to each other." "That was before. We've reconnected in recent months, during my travels." Elizabeth took a sip of her coffee. "I'm selling everything I still have in the United States. The foundation I created will continue the social work I started, but I will no longer be directly involved." "And what about me?" asked Tyler, feeling despair grow. "Grandma, I've changed. I'm working, learning to take care of myself." "And that's exactly what you should be doing." Elizabeth interrupted him, delicately placing the cup on the saucer. "Tyler, you're 25 years old. You should have learned this a long time ago." "But I'm your grandson, your only family." "Family?" Elizabeth's voice became colder. "Family isn't just blood ties, Tyler. It's care, it's respect, it's reciprocity. Things you never demonstrated." "I can change, Grandma. Please give me another chance." Elizabeth observed him for a few moments, her penetrating gaze assessing the sincerity in her grandson's words. "Maybe you are really changing, Tyler. And that's good, but not for me, for yourself." She opened her purse and took out an envelope. "Here's what's left for you from your grandfather's inheritance." Tyler took the envelope with trembling hands, hopeful. Upon opening it, he found a check for a much more modest amount than expected, but still significant. "It's enough for you to start a decent life if you know how to manage it." Elizabeth stood up, adjusting her purse on her shoulder. "There will be nothing more after this, Tyler. This is the end of our financial relationship." "Grandma, please." Tyler tried to hold her hand, but Elizabeth backed away. "Goodbye, Tyler. I really hope you find your way." With those words, Elizabeth turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Tyler alone with the check and his reflections. In the years that followed, Tyler matured the hard way. The money he received from his grandmother was used wisely, not to show off, but to invest in his education. He graduated in business administration, working during the day and studying at night. The experience at the dealership evolved into a management position, and eventually he managed to open his own business, a small insurance brokerage. He never had direct news from Elizabeth again, only occasional information through mutual acquaintances. He learned that she was living happily in Italy, that she had written a memoir, that she actively participated in the local community. 5. Years after that meeting at the museum cafe, Tyler received international correspondence. It was a copy of Elizabeth's book, Rebirth at 70, How I Discovered My Freedom. On the first page, a simple dedication. To Tyler, who unknowingly taught me to value my own life. Elizabeth. Tyler closed the book, feeling a mixture of regret and gratitude. Despite everything, Elizabeth had given him one last lesson. It's never too late to start over. That same day, he wrote a long email to his grandmother, without expectations of a response, just to express his feelings and tell about his new life. To his surprise, hours later, he received a short reply. "Grandma, can we talk? Now, yes, I'm ready to truly listen to you." The end. Dear listener, what did you think of this journey of learning and redemption? The story of Elizabeth and Tyler shows us how it's never too late to value those who really care about us, and also how it's never too late to start over, even after major mistakes. Do you believe Elizabeth did the right thing by teaching her grandson this lesson? Or would it have been better to forgive him from the beginning? Share your opinion in the comments below. We're eager to know where you're watching from and what you thought of this outcome. If the story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving narratives like this one. Your participation is what motivates us to continue telling stories that move and transform.